All right, so I want to break down the exact strategy that we coach a new agent to.
Yep.
From brand new in the business to earning a $100,000 plus income in 12 months or less, because we've had coaching clients that have done it in less time.
Yep.
But I want to give the audience that are going to watch or listen to this the exact framework. So for anybody out there watching or listening, Colton and I created a 2-page PDF. You guys can download this exact strategy. There's a link right underneath this video to grab your copy of it. So we're going to walk you through it today. And when you leave this video, you will not have any confusion on what to do to create a multiple 6-figure income in this industry as a brand new agent. So why don't you kind of walk us through some high level, like how we're going to build this plan, average sales price, commissions, things like that.
Yeah, you always want to be very conservative. Like you talk about, plan for the worst, hope for the best. And so what we did is we took an average sales price across the country of $350 on a 2.5% commission. So being conservative, you'll probably end up doing more than that. So conservative on this plan, we said the average commission is $87.50.
Yeah, I love it. So we're going to build the plan on that, right? The average commission being $87.50.
Yep.
All right, so let's go through how I want to do this. Is I want to break this down for people based on what they have to do annually.
Yep.
So they can say, okay, I can conceptualize that. We'll break it down by month, and then we'll get really clear on what they have to do every day.
Yes.
And then we'll get into the actual part 2, which is the strategy.
Cool.
All right, so let's get into the annual numbers. So the first thing we have to look at is what you and I call our conversion, essentially our conversion matrix, right?
Yep.
So walk people through this matrix, like their first year through 5th year, high level, so they can get an understand of the context in which we're talking about.
So yeah, high level. When you guys download this PDF, you'll see there's year 1 through 5, and we start year 1. You have to do a lot more to get the same result, right? And
why is that? So for what reason?
So I think there's 2 things. Number 1, your skill set. You're just not as skilled up yet. And your pipeline maturity isn't there. You just don't have the pipeline built
Those
up.
are the 2 things. Hopefully you guys heard what Colton just said. It's lack of skills.
Yep.
And you have no leads that have manifested. There is no pipeline maturity.
Yep.
So you're starting every conversation from scratch. It's the first conversation going into the database. So year 1 conversions we've got built out in the matrix. It's going to take you about 100 conversations to set 1 appointment. 50% of those appointments that you set, you'll actually meet with. 50% of the people you meet with will turn into a listing, and 50% of the listings you take will turn into 1 closed transaction. So that's the framework I want to stay on in this conversation.
Yep.
For people that have more experience than that, when you guys download the PDF worksheet, you'll see what the conversion looks like in years 2, 3, 4, 5 plus. Yep. But for this video, I want to really focus on the brand new agent. So with those conversions, break down the annual plan.
So annually, you're going to take, your average commission we said is $87.50. Whatever yours is, go ahead and do that, but we're going to use $87.50, and you're going to divide that by your income goal. In this scenario, $100K. So we're going to divide that $87.50. So we need 12 deals. So that's where it starts. We know how many transactions, and then from there, when we plug in all these other numbers across the year 1 matrix, we can get the appointments needed, appointments set, contacts made. So we just go down the list. 12 deals needed. If you're going to be going from a 50% listing taken to sold number, you just double it, right? Because it's 50%. So you cut it in half, double it, puts us at 24 listings needed.
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So 24. That's exactly right. So you need a deal a month, right? So 24 listings you need to take. Now, there's questions on, well, why is that the case? Why do you guys build a business plan on a 50% listing taken to listing sold ratio when all I'm hearing is how fast listings are selling? And the reason we do this is because you said at the beginning of the conversation, we're building a plan based on worst case scenarios. So when we're coaching an agent, if they can hit these numbers, we're padding the plan so that the likelihood of them succeeding in accomplishing the goals that they've set is 100 or as close to 100% as possible.
Exactly. And your first month in the business is another great example.
That's right.
Right? So it's one thing to know once an agent's in the business, you can kind of figure out how to do a CMA. Within 5, 10, 20K, you can figure out hey, this home should sell for $350. But it's another thing, going back to skills, to get the homeowner to list it at that price.
That is exactly right.
So that's part of the also reason. You may know how to do a CMA, but your skills aren't going to allow you to get everything sold yet.
Yeah, to communicate to a seller And really, a new agent having the confidence and the
Right.
skills to be transparent and communicate in a way that influences the seller to make good decisions is very difficult than just doing a CMA on the computer by yourself.
Because especially in the beginning, you're, oh, you know what, it's a listing, it's overpriced, this is my first listing, and you're going to want to take it, which makes sense. But over time, as you get less needy, you could be more direct with people.
Exactly right. So that's why we say you need 24 listings taken to close 12, right?
Yep.
So let's go to category number 4. So the number of appointments met.
Yep.
So because it's a 50% conversion, you need to meet with 48 homeowners, present to 48 homeowners rather.
Yes.
That 50% of those will convert. Now, again, in your first year, your presentation isn't going to be as compelling as it will be over time. And we're going to talk about that later in this conversation.
Correct.
But 50%, I mean, truth be told, we're probably being generous there.
Correct. I think so. Well, and people I'm sure will ask too, and I'd love to ask you this because a lot of what you talk about, you know, you're known as the FSBO guy, the prospecting guy, right? Which is a big part of what we do, and there's other things we'll get into. But when you say 50%, are you only saying qualified listing appointments, preview appointments, or are we combining those?
We're combining everything.
Okay, that's what
we're combining everything,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about why that's important, and that's a really good point. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. So category number 5, number of appointments set. So we need to set, based on this plan, 96 appointments so that we can go on 48.
Yep.
This is, again, being generous because you're going to get to the point where you can get people to tell you yes over the phone,
right?
But a lot of them start to cancel on you. Or you may learn to cancel on some if the appointment doesn't make sense, right? So we think that's very conservative to have a 50% appointment set to met ratio.
Yep.
And then the number of conversations that we need to have over the course of the entire year is 9,600. Why? Well, because it's 100 conversations over the phone, right, to set one appointment.
Yep.
So that's the annual plan. So break that down into what that looks like monthly and daily.
Yeah, monthly. Daily, simple. Start there since it's just 40 contacts a day. You take the overall number, and we divide this through 240 working days because even if you say, oh, I work 7 days a week, I don't take a vacation, this and that, you're going to take time off. So we want to be, again, very conservative. So 240 working days gets us to 40 contacts a day. Now, going up to the weekly, you're going to be doing 800 contacts a week. Okay, so that's where we get
a month, right?
Monthly. Sorry, monthly. Yeah, monthly. 800 contacts a month, which means you need to set 8 appointments a month, go on 4 of them, and then you get 2 listings.
That's right.
So
that's the plan that we coach to, right?
Yep.
And so it breaks down, to your point, the daily. It can't be more clear than that. No. And I want to spend a second here because when I'm coaching an agent or I'm having conversations with a group of agents, they're asking me questions all the time, Colton, with like, well, what about this? And I'm struggling. I feel overwhelmed, and I just feel like I'm spinning my wheels. I was in front of a group yesterday, and this question came up. And I always ask an agent one question. I say, well, Bob, let me ask you this. How many conversations are you having daily? And the answer is always little to none.
Yeah. And
I said, well, wait a minute. Let me pause for a second. If we look at the spectrum of how to succeed in this industry, 80 to 90% of the results come through daily conversations.
Right.
However, and then the 20% is your weekly email and your social media and all the other stuff. But it's super rare to find an agent that prioritizes daily conversations. They actually spend 80 to 90% on everything else and very little time having conversations. So before we move forward, I want to make a point that if you're a brand new agent listening to this, until you're having these 30 to 40 conversations a day, nothing else is more important, and you shouldn't expect anything to happen if you're not doing this. So the takeaway from this conversation is have 40 we coach agents right now that make $40,000, $50,000 a month, and all they do is phone calls.
They just talk to people.
No email, no social media presence, no website, no nothing else. It's just phone calls.
Yeah.
So until that's true, nothing else matters.
And one more quick thing on that too, what inexperienced agents don't realize is if our goal is 40 contacts needed to set, essentially to hit that number, the thing is, we break that down into 40 contacts a day, right? Well, if someone's calling for 30 minutes or an hour and they set one appointment or 2 appointments and they talk to 20 people, they'll stop.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And you got to understand the law of averages. You got to keep going. And you may have 3 days where you have 40 contacts, and then you get nothing, but you just got to keep going no matter what that result is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, because the person listening to this or watching this video says, okay, well, I did 40 conversations today and I didn't set an appointment. So you guys are, or better yet, it takes 100, right? So I did this for 3 days in a row. These are averages.
Right.
We have to look at this like, the roulette table at a casino. It spins 24/7. There's a 37.5% likelihood it lands on red and a 37.5% it lands on black. Yep. That doesn't mean that out of 100 spins, it lands 37 times here and 37 times there. It's an average over the course of using the law of large numbers.
You have some times where it's 7 in a row, it's on black, and it's like, son of a gun, man.
Exactly right. All right, so let's break into part 2 of the action plan here, which is the strategy. So let's get into the sources of business on the lead generation side, Colton, that we think makes the most sense for new agents to focus on.
Well, it goes back to starting off, I think it was 2 videos ago, if you're watching this video, 2 or 3 videos ago, where you talk about the biggest regret of your career, which was neglecting your sphere. So sphere has got to be number 1, top of your priority list. Even if you say, oh, I don't have a big sphere, doesn't matter. Just talk to the people you know, get to know people in your local area, and have that be a priority number 1.
Yeah, and here's the truth. The truth is, and NAR reports on this all the time, but the reality is whether an agent prioritizes it or not, that's still where they're going to get most of their business from.
Yeah.
And I think people, they listen to a lot of our content talking about all these different lead sources. It's only a small portion of the pie.
Right.
I mean, if you look at any real estate agent that's been in this business for any length of time, it's very common that 30, 40, 50% of their business, maybe even higher, comes from their sphere, whether they're prioritizing it or not.
Yeah.
So when we coach an agent, we want them to prioritize this and make this their first priority when it comes to lead generation. And we teach them how to communicate to that group of people, because that's always the concern. Well, dude, I don't want to call my friends and family and be the annoying salesperson asking for business. And I don't want you to do that either.
Heck no.
So let's keep rocking and rolling.
Yep. So then we got, what you call the hand raisers, essentially. So FSBOS and expireds. I mean, even if there's few in your market, that's what we're hearing all the time right now, over the last few months at least. It's like, oh, I don't have a lot. Okay, even if there's 1 a week, just call it. Yeah. Just like make it a priority, because there's a chance and they're so much more likely to sell. So those have to be.
And that's going to change here in a second. As this market shifts.
It's shifting. Yeah.
I mean, we're already seeing, in our market and our coaching clients reporting, and this is what I told everybody, we're going to get back to the day, Colton, when there's 20, 30 FSBOs a day, 20, 30 expireds a day.
Yep.
This is the lowest hanging fruit. It's best opportunity to get a now listing. And yes, they are hard to convert, but you need that to sharpen your skills.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing right now, old expireds.
Yes.
It's one of the greatest opportunities with little to no competition, with the highest converting homeowner. So for sale by owners, new and old expired listings should be part of the plan. Talk about Source 4.
Source 4, and I would love for you to expand on this, because you've opened up my eyes to this, is your niche. So when you say a niche, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so, there's all kinds of cute little sayings out there, like the riches are in the niches. Yeah. It is true.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So the easiest example for people to understand this is when we look at doctors, right? So you have the general practitioner that we all go see when we, have a temperature and we're sick. Those people make, no bullshit, those people make like 80 to 100 grand a year, right? Yeah. And then you have the brain surgeon, who's like only focus is on this one niche. Like if you have something outside of your brain, you don't go see this person.
Right.
Well, their average income's, in the millions.
Yeah.
Well, why? They're so specialized. Most people think, especially in our industry, dude, like the wider I go, the better it is.
Yeah.
And I was like that for a long time too. But when we talk about a niche, if you can really specialize in one area of the business, you can become the go-to person in your market in this specific area. And now the inverse happens. You have the entire market coming to you instead of you going to the entire market. So what am I talking about as an example? Let's just pretend you're going to, I'll just give you a couple. Let's talk about working with elders.
Okay.
So there's a lot of moving parts if you're dealing with somebody who's transitioning from living on their own to being mentally impaired and moving that person into some type of assisted living. There's all kinds of things. I mean, NAR even has a certification around working with these people. So imagine a world you are, and I'm not talking about, oh, that sounds like a good niche. I'm talking about being an actual expert. Like, you know exactly how to communicate with family members. You know how to deal with mentally impaired people. You have a value proposition or a strategy to move these people from their home into assisted living. Well, what happens is this. You start to get the attention of people that work at these assisted living. You start to get the attention of elder care attorneys, estate planning attorneys that need somebody on their team to refer business to when this happens. And oh, by the way, it's happening by the thousands. On every corner in every city across the country, there are 2 or 3 assisted living facilities going up everywhere. Yeah. And so that would be an example of a niche. When you are an expert in a niche, now you can go out and market yourself as such, and business is plentiful. It's easy to get this because you're not competing with anybody like you are with a for sale by owner or an expired listing or a generalist. There's no one that can compete with you if you're certified to work with seniors, and there's nobody that knows the senior needs better than you.
Yeah, and really, when you're just speaking to that, you're just speaking to the number one problem or pain point that niche has, and you're just branding around it. You know, you're not just, hey, I'll help your elder care person move into this assisted living. It's like, you understand that manager, as an example, at the assisted living facility, their number one problem is hitting their quota, and because they can't get the person to have the funds, which are tied up in their home. So if you can speak to that, you'll stand out a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I would go as far as, and we have a good friend who runs a divorce certification training. She's made her entire practice off of this, and she makes, I won't give her actual income on this, but she's making a very, very good living. She doesn't just list like any house like a normal realtor does, Colton. She only works with divorce cases. And she's out producing almost everybody in the country. And she has a high multiple 6-figure income doing this one niche, because going back to being the expert, imagine a world you are a divorce real estate expert and you can go and testify in front of a judge, and you can handle the questions from both sides of the attorneys, and you can be an expert testimony in the case. Well, you know how valuable that is to a judge?
Very valuable.
To a divorce judge. And now when the divorce judge says, okay, I'm going to mandate the realtor who's going to handle the sale of this transaction, it's going to be Bob, because he's the expert, right?
Yep.
So that's what I mean by niche. So talk to us about Source 5.
Source 5, we are your farm. So just the area, this is where you can start to pinpoint the neighborhoods, the price ranges, right? This is where you can get out of the needing to sell, 100 homes to hit your income goal, where you could focus on an area and maybe sell 50 homes, and you could kind of focus down on your price point. So just kind of having a farm area and an action plan around attacking that.
And the idea there is very similar to a niche. This could be a niche.
Yes, exactly. Same with number 6 too.
That's right.
So, it can count for all.
So the farm is, I know more about these houses in this neighborhood than any agent you'll ever talk to in your entire life.
Yep.
I know the type of windows. I know the roof shingle on every of these homes. I know how much a finished basement gets in this neighborhood versus that neighborhood.
Yep.
And nobody can, these are called competition killers. When you know so much more than your competitors, well, no one can fuck with you.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then the last one, Source 6, which is like one of my favorite ways to grow this business, is we've turned a B2C, a business to consumer industry, into a B2B business, and going after referral partners, right? Building relationships with attorneys and serving their book of business when they refer clients to you.
Yeah.
And so those would be the 6 sources that we would focus on. So let's get into contact distribution.
Yep.
So we have our 6 sources that agents should focus on to get to 100K. Now it's like, okay, well, who do I call? Who do I contact? How do I contact? How many of them do I contact? We call it contact distribution when we coach an agent. And what works really well is if we can split the focus on 50% of our communication to hand raisers.
Yep.
FSBOS, expireds, old expired listings, 25% in our top of funnel categories. So this would be your farm and your niche,
yep.
right?
Yep.
And then 25% inside of your database. So this would be your sphere of influence and your referral partners. So there are 6 sources of business. All you have to do is break 2 sources by each contact distribution.
Yeah, very simple.
Very simple, right? So if you need 40 conversations a day, what does that look like as far as how many contacts you need to make in each category?
So, if you're breaking it up that way, I mean, just starting with the hand raisers, 50%, that'd be 20 FSBOs and expireds, old expireds as well.
Which is really clear.
Very simple.
20 conversations with for sale by owners,
Yeah.
expired listings, old expired listings, and withdrawn listings.
Yep, 100%. And then from there, your sphere is going to be 10 of them, and then your niche, farm, referral partner, whatever you choose for there, that's going to be the other 10 of the 40.
And I love that framework, dude, because now it's just a checklist. It takes, because when people hear 40 conversations, I'm telling you,
overwhelming. They're like,
they shut down.
How am I going to do that?
Like 40 conversations. Dude, who am I going to call?
Right.
Now they know exactly who to call and they just check it off the list.
Yep.
All right. So let's get into the strategy or the focus. So they know what lead sources to focus on. They know the numbers they need to hit. They know their contact distribution. So when they're out there having these conversations, what should the focus be?
Priority number 1 is always to get face-to-face with somebody.
That's right. That's exactly
the
right.
only time you pick up the phone, send anything is just to try to meet with another human being.
Yeah. And, the common questions or thoughts here is like, well, I hear some people saying, qualify. Don't ever go on an appointment unless it's qualified. Well, again, I won't go into this too deep, but when you get face-to-face, the reality is most of the people, when you sell a house, they're thinking about selling their house months.
Way before.
Months before they actually sell their house. So what we know, based on the studies and the stats, is that people list their house with the first agent they meet with. So, like, using common sense, it's like, okay, if somebody you talk to says, yes, I'm looking at selling my house at X time in the future, call it motivation. I don't really care what the time frame is. I want you to go on that face-to-face appointment, secure the business up front so that you can get come list me calls.
Yep.
The thought and the idea or the theory that you can just call people on one conversation, get the listing over the phone, go there, get a contract signed is extremely unlikely. And I think it's setting up agents for a false expectation.
Well, and you know what it allows you to do that I think this is something you do better than anyone else, but it's just because you've been intentional working on it, is for the folks who are new to a market, or like me when I started at 19 years old, like I didn't have a sphere. Just if you start connecting with those people and just building a relationship with them, being there for them, that's adding to your sphere anyway.
That's exactly right.
Even if you don't sell that home, you're just there. You're the authority, and they're going to want to refer you business.
Yeah, I made a video. I put it out. Yeah, in the video I said my biggest regret. I talk about the seller lead database. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
Because you got your top 100. I don't want to get into this because I want to keep this focused. But like in the database, you have 2 buckets. You've got your top 100 and your seller lead database. You're talking about these people become part of your sphere after you have the conversation, after you have the meeting.
Yep.
So we want you to focus on, when you have these conversations, keeping in mind the only reason you're calling is to set an appointment.
Yep.
Right? And so the next thing is, once you have these face-to-face consultations, you want to put them into a follow-up system. 80 to 90% of your contracts or your listings, in other words, your money that you make in this business, is going to come through lead follow-up, not lead generation.
Yep.
And I think that's another misconception people are confusing.
Yep.
It's like, it's a process. You generate the lead, then you follow up, cultivate the lead, then you convert the lead.
Yeah.
Right? So our framework, why don't you just walk them through high level what that framework could look like?
Yeah, high level, weekly phone call. And again, the intention, what is the intention for this follow-up? Not to just talk to people, well, to talk and connect, but to set an appointment. So always keep that number 1 thing there on the list here in mind. So make the phone call, put them on a weekly email. And if anything, do that.
Yeah.
Like, that is the 80-20 of your follow-up.
Right.
That's the 80-20, because when we get into these next 2 things here, that's where people start doing this and that. And it could be so simple, though. The next 2 things are your monthly mailer and your digital farming.
Yeah. So you nailed it. I mean, if you break this down, 80% of your results are going to come through the weekly phone call follow-ups and the weekly email.
Yep.
Once you start to build a business, you start generating revenue, you can start farming your database.
Yes.
Right? 2 ways. You can be sending direct mail marketing, right, to stay top of mind, because we know open rates in the mail are the highest out of anything.
Yeah.
Higher than phone calls. text, email, digital ads. It's way better.
They
got
to touch it. They got to throw it away.
Touch it. And then digital farming, meaning to start your own Facebook group. Yep. And as you're generating leads that go into the database, you're adding these people on Facebook, and then you're adding them to your Facebook group, where then you can communicate and you can control the distribution of communication in your own Facebook farm.
Yes.
All right. So then the last focus is then these agents, if this is going to happen, they have to create what you and I call a compelling presentation. And really two parts specifically. I'll talk about the first one. You talk about the second one.
Okay.
A pricing strategy. We were just talking off air about this.
Yeah.
So if an agent's going to really win, they have to have, number one, they have to know how to price property. They need to know the market, right? Yeah. And I don't care what niche it is, but at the end of the day, when you get a listing, you need to know, how do I position this in the marketplace in such a way that it does become the obvious choice amongst all of the other homes that are for sale. So you have to have a compelling pricing presentation that sets you apart from any other agent that a homeowner would talk to. Yep. So we teach our agents how to do this, right?
Yep.
How do we go in there and do an active buyer analysis? How do we know for sure where most of the buyers are based on price bracketing, based on the data, right? So why are we pricing a house this way? We're basing it off the data, not a feeling like most agents do. So that'd be number one.
And imagine a world where sellers are calling you for price reductions too.
Exactly.
We'll put it that way, with the way it goes. And then the value proposition is a very similar way that you described it. Now, instead of the pricing presentation positioning the home as the obvious choice, the value proposition positions you as the obvious choice as an agent. So there's a bunch of different ones you can have. We talk about them throughout the channel. No handcuff listing, savvy seller program, flexible commission. There's a bunch of things you can do, but you don't want to go in there as every other agent and say, I'm going to negotiate hard for you. You can trust me. I've been in business for 10 years. You don't want to rely on that.
Right.
You don't want to be a traditional realtor. You want to be different.
Yeah, and different's the key word, because all those other things is what people are expecting anyways.
Correct.
It's not valuable because it's not different.
You shouldn't have to articulate that. That's almost like it's just a given, you know?
Like when you buy a car, like you expect it to turn on.
Exactly.
So that can't be part of your value prop.
Exactly.
Well, what do you mean? There's some cars
the blinkers
that don't turn
work.
On? Yeah. So that's not a value proposition.
Right.
The value proposition has to be created in a way that when you deliver it to a homeowner, that you become irresistible. Yeah. That the seller says, I just can't work with anybody else.
Right.
It's just, there's too much value there.
And when you combine that with incredible sales skills through reverse selling, you just want to make their thought process be like, well, there's nothing that could go wrong with this.
Yeah.
Like, I can't make a bad decision by choosing you.
Yeah. And just to give one more piece of context is the value proposition is based on two things. It's increasing the seller's certainty and at the same time decreasing their risk. Yep. We call that the value ladder. So those two things is what needs to happen in order for you to have a valuable offer. Yep. So you guys, hopefully you got value from today, but just, you can grab this PDF. There's a link right underneath this video. It'll walk you through this entire worksheet. Then, and whatever your goals are, you can align it with the conversion matrix. Grab this lead or this worksheet, and it'll show you exactly what to do. If you have any questions about the worksheet after you guys download it, you can use the comments, and either Colton and I will respond to it. But I appreciate the time today.
Or just book in a call, and we'll help you fill it out.
Yeah, exactly right.
Cool.
Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to you guys soon.
See you next week.